Welcome to another episode of OG55. I got the Italiano on location. I got Mr. Michael Webb, our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. I also got the one and only Mr. Theme Park Conductor. We have a lot to discuss today. We are talking about Josh D'Amaro's recent comments at that event at Walt Disney World. We are also going to talk about that $2 billion spent for Tokyo Fantasy Springs. And we're going to dive into a lot of other stuff. We got some tidbits here from Florida in regards to the Mermaid Show, all that good stuff up next on OG55. Welcome aboard, everybody, to another episode of OG55. I am OG.
Young blood, but I'm built like an OG.
There we go. I'm OG, and I have the Italiano with me, Mr. Webber, and Conductor with me. Before we get started, Italiano, if you could let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media, sir.
Absolutely. You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Disney George. You could also find me on Instagram under the Disney Italiano. And of course, you can find me right here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
There he is. And right down below, we got the one, the only Mr. Michael Webber. Welcome back, sir.
OG, thank you so much for having me on. And this is going to be a great topic, and I'm so glad to be here to discuss this with all three of you sexy gentlemen.
Thank you, sir. If you could let everybody home know where they could find you on social media.
Absolutely. So you can find Mr. Webber on Twitter, X, or whatever you want to call it these days.
Yeah.
You can find me on there, Mr. Webber at WebSlinger760. You can also find me on the same place on Instagram and also here on OG55.
There we go. And Mr. Theme Park Conductor, it is good to have you back, sir.
It's good to be back, OG. It's good to be back.
We love having you, sir. If you could remind everybody at home where they could find you on social media.
Absolutely. You can find me on Twitter, formerly known at Theme Conductor. On Instagram, you can find me at Theme Park Conductor. On YouTube, same thing. On Discord, same thing.
There he is. And Conductor's been doing a lot of live shows lately. He did one from Universal recently. He's done one from home, like Q&As and what have you. Really, really cool stuff. So make sure you do give him a subscribe on YouTube. He does really phenomenal work. If you're into theme parks, that's your guy. All right, here we go. Let's dive into our first topic at hand. We have Tokyo Disney taps Frozen and Peter Pan in a $2 billion expansion. Fantasy Springs section will have new rides, hotels, and eateries. Weaker yen is luring record number of visitors to Japan. So here's the interesting thing with this. $2 billion, right? We were told from Disney and the city of Anaheim that Disney has to invest a minimum of $1.9 billion into the Disneyland resort, right? In the next 10 years. And that's a minimum. So they could go higher. $2 billion got Tokyo, $2 billion US dollars got Tokyo a 35-acre expansion, which is absolutely gorgeous, which is with 35 acres, which includes that amazing theme park land, including that giant hotel, right? That's what $2 billion got them. Now, if they were to build this exact same thing here in Anaheim, you're looking at just that, basically, for $2 billion, essentially. George, I'll go to you first. What are your thoughts on this? Because look, here's my thing on it, right? You're not going to have 35 acres. We already know the Simba parking lot is like 25 or 30. They're not going to use that whole area for theme park space. So we're not going to have anything on this size, at least. Pandora, even, I think, in DCA, if they use the Simba lot, will probably only be between maybe 9-10 acres, I'm guessing, maybe 11 or 12, maybe at the most, which is, still half of what this is. That would run about $1 billion, and that would leave you another $1 billion to go. But what do you think, George? What do you think this means for Disneyland Resort based on the price tag and what we got here in Tokyo?
Well, I think fans have to kind of get into the mindset of expecting Disney to make an announcement or have something that's constantly going like every year. Like when Fantasy Springs now is open, Tokyo Disney is now going to allow guests to enjoy this, probably like with the hype and everything and giving the opportunity, for people to get over there and experience these things. You're probably looking between maybe like 5 or 6 years before they maybe even consider doing something aside from Tokyo doing their newer updated Tomorrowland.
Right.
But I feel with that kind of price tag and with that type of immersion that you're adding three mini IP lands into one giant land
You get your money's
where
worth.
it's and people are saying, well, okay, like even to $30 billion, that's going to be 50% of the 60 billion that's going to be invested into the parks over the time. A big chunk of that is going to go into the domestics, especially with Walt Disney World, and with Disneyland Forward. So I'm not really calculating where people are thinking it's not enough.
Well,
When 2 billion just got Tokyo this.
right, and that's the thing, because people are thinking, okay, 1.9 billion, right, which is essentially $2 billion, right? They're thinking 1.9 billion dollars over 10 years, and they're expecting something big every year. So it's obviously not enough, right? You can't, it doesn't spread that thin. But that's the thing, George. I'm glad you brought that up, because you don't need something every single year, not something that big at least. If you build a 10, 11 acre Pandora for $1 billion, you don't need another $1 billion expansion the following year, and then the following year, and the following year. You can have the $1 billion expansion, and for the next 2 or 3 years, you can have smaller investments. These things go a long way. We're still feeling the positive impact of things like Cars Land, and that was over a decade ago. So this idea that 2 billion or 1.9 billion won't be enough over 10 years is kind of silly, because it really is more than enough if you allocate it properly. And that's what I've been saying the whole time. If you allocate it properly, you can make this go, you can stretch this out. You know what I'm saying? And we don't need, like what you were saying, George, we don't need $1 billion expansion every year. That's not realistic. Even Universal isn't doing that, you guys. As much as Universal's doing amazing things, they're not even doing that kind of stuff. So if you do it, go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry, I got to finish.
Well, I was just saying, so if you have the $1 billion expansion, you wait a couple of years, maybe do another $1 billion, you're good. So that's kind of where I stand. Go ahead, George, and then we'll go to Conductor.
And also too, that is the minimum that they have to hit.
Exactly.
So as long as Disney hits it, if Disney wanted to go over that amount, they could. And one can argue, say, is Disney really going to, go over? They very well could be. They may want to hold on to that $5 million to pay to the city if they don't, exceed over 1.9 billion. But we don't really know what Disney has in store. And the way that everything is being addressed to us and kind of showcased to us right now, even though it's not in full detail, I think honestly Disney is on that upward trajectory to honestly, I feel like that they could possibly surpass 1.9 billion, to be honest. So even if they were to just do the 1.9 billion alone, I think honestly it's going to be in the right amount that it'll allow people to adjust and be able to experience it while we're waiting for the next thing into the pipeline. And one last final thing I just have to say before we move to Conductor is, speaking just for Disneyland Forward, I am getting kind of irritated when people are comparing Disneyland Forward with the movement of Epic Universe. Yes, Epic Universe is a whole theme park, and people are saying, okay, well, it's taken them 5 years. Why is it taking it 40 years for Disney? Disneyland Forward technically is not the project. Disneyland Forward was basically the headliner to try to convince the city of Anaheim, the residents and the businesses, hey, this is our plot of land. We would like to have it rezoned. It's not going to affect you in any way,
Right.
so we can have an expansion over the many decades of Disneyland. This was never supposed to be a 5-year expansion, do everything at once, and then Disneyland is stuck in the same position that they're in right now.
The people that are saying that don't even understand the Epic Universe equation, because even Universal with Epic Universe isn't using all of their land. They have a lot more land on that Epic Universe in the Epic Universe area. It's smart business to space this stuff out. You don't want to blow your load and you're back to square one. And then what do? That's ridiculous. And sometimes fans don't know what they're talking about. You want it to be multi-decade expansion. You want to space the stuff out and have year after year after year, or decade after decade of growth potential. You don't want to blow everything at once. That makes no sense. You cannibalize all your financial growth in a couple of years. And why would you do that? That makes zero sense. Conductor, what are your thoughts on this $2 billion price tag for Fantasy Springs and what that might mean for Disneyland Resort and how we approach it over here?
Okay, so the touch up on George's point. So like you're saying, it would Disneyland Forward was a headliner. You can't compare it to Epic Universe, because with Disneyland Forward, the problem is it's surrounded by neighbors, by businesses, and all that. Epic Universe is totally different. It's on a plot of land where there's, as far as I know,
it's huge.
There's no residents around. There's no businesses. There's no, you have to rezone this and rezone. It's a huge plot of land. And to your point, OG, they've actually showed Bayou Reconstruct, which I want to tell your followers, if you want to follow Epic Universe and the construction and all that, definitely check him out on Twitter. But he's taken photos of expansion slots at Epic Universe. So you're absolutely right. They haven't used every square inch for Epic Universe yet. Now, right. on to the point of Disneyland, to spend the $1.9 billion, I agree with you guys. If they're going to spend that amount of money let's just top it off, $2 billion in the next 10 years. The question is, do they bring the Disney Sea or the Fantasy Springs, or do they bring Avatar? The reason why I say that, if I'm not mistaken, the last time I was on your show, OG, I think George was pointed out a lot of those attractions that are at Disney Springs, aren't they on a how can I put it? Aren't they on a landlock for what, 5-10 years before we can even start building that? And that would be half the time Disneyland has to even start building it. So I think if Disneyland Forward wants to win, whether you want to base it off Disneyland Forward or just Disneyland period, I think since Avatar has already been built in Walt Disney World, they already have an idea, what they need to build the land. I think that would be the smart way to go, because at that point, you can build the land, people can enjoy it, and it might reach that $2 billion mark or even close to it. That way, if they want to do small projects, they can to the Disneyland Resort, to California Adventure, and reach that. Or if they do want to build Disney Springs first, they can build it in sections and open it up when a section is completed, and then work on the next section so you spread it out. That's what I think.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's why I said when they announced that 1.9 billion for 10 years. That's why I said when people were saying it's not enough, it's like, well, hold on. We don't know how they're going to spend that money. How you spend it is the entire thing. So if you buy one Fantasy Springs style land, okay, then you blew all the money already in like one project. But if you do a 10-acre Pandora, that's not going to cost you $2 billion. That'll probably be $1 billion land, and now you have another $1 billion to play with.
I'll say this: within the next 10 years, if just for DCA alone, if they were to put in Pandora and just say Zootopia for good measure, that covers for the $2 billion for the first 10 years. Okay, so it's 2 lands for 10 years, and folks can say 2 lands for 10 years. Like we should be in the equivalence of like 5 lands and over the 10 years. Okay, well, let's look at it in the standpoint of like what we have now. Galaxy's Edge came out in 2019. That was
Right.
5 years ago. Toontown got a little bit of an upgrade, and Avengers Campus opened in 2021.
I think so.
22.
Yeah.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Okay, so nothing really too much major. Which when Avengers Campus opened, we didn't get an e-ticket. We got web slingers.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, I'm at the parks, and I tell you what, it didn't do a damn thing as far as for attendance, as far as I'm concerned, because people are still coming. So I think honestly, even though nothing major has come out into the parks, people are still coming. I think if you add a Pandora and a Zootopia into what we already have now over the next 10 years, just with DCA alone,
Right.
you're going to get people going through those turnstiles like crazy.
Well,
oh, go ahead, Webb. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just, so to George, your point, right, is that let's look at what was before Galaxy's Edge and before the Toontown update, right? And also before Avengers Campus, there was still crowds going to the parks, and people back then were complaining about how crowded it was. So I mean, you're gonna tell me that like that we need something big like constantly all the time, like year after year after year. You don't, and it's because again, when Galaxy's Edge was being built, we had the Rivers of America, Fantasmic, the train down for like what would you like 2 years or so
Oh
during
yeah.
that time. But before that, like here's the thing: if they never built it, Disneyland would still be packed as ever. And now we gain the Haunted Mansion update. We're getting into the Tiana's thing.
Right. What even new came out recently at Islands of Adventure?
Well, I was just going to say that, George. In 2014, they opened Diagon Alley. That was the last big land. Since then, we've gotten what? Velocicoaster? What else, you guys? I mean,
Hagrid's, the Minions ride, even though it's a reskin of Shrek, but still.
Right. So a pretty minimal, if outside of Diagon, you didn't really get, you got a coaster, the reskin Minion thing, and Hagrid's is great. You got to give it to that, and so is Velocicoaster. But you got 2 coasters, a reskin Minions, and you got Diagon Alley, and that's been in a decade. Now, so that's what I'm saying. There wasn't like a brand new $1 billion land every year at Universal either. So why are we expecting that here in Anaheim? I don't understand that.
Actually, you know what, too? I just thought about this, right? Because, like years, like for a long time, people have always wanted a new Tomorrowland, right? Oh, we got Disneyland, right? We want a new Tomorrowland. Every D23, hopefully new Tomorrowland, hopefully a new Tomorrowland, right? Never got it. But what it looks like is I'm wondering how much of that money is going to be used to revamp lands, right? Because look, we got Toontown. They're touching Critter Country with everything. New Orleans. So I'm wondering if maybe soon that we'll get a Tomorrowland revamp, maybe in the next decade or so. Because I was talking to George, I was like, well, personally, I wouldn't mind if they bulldozed down the entire thing except Space Mountain and then redid it, right? But if they did that, that's a huge chunk of land that we're already complaining about for Critter Country and New Orleans over there. So I would think if they were to do that, they would need to do it partly by sections, kind of what Conductor was saying, like do things by sections, and maybe that could be part of the like allocated money that they might use that for. But also another note too, I was looking on a Forbes as well, and it looks like that 1 billion. It costs Disney 1 billion for each of the Star Wars Galaxy's Edge lands.
Right.
So 2 billion right there for 2 Galaxy's Edge.
Right, which tracks because each of those lands are like 14 acres. So both of those together would be about 30 acres. Fantasy Springs, I think, is 35 acres, and that was 2 billion. So these lands roughly cost Disney around $1 billion, roughly, give or take with inflation. But at ballpark, it's pretty much $1 billion. So you do one big land in this first decade, and then you have another $1 billion to play with. Then you can build smaller attractions. You can do some entertainment or whatever, just like Universal did over Islands of Adventure after they built Diagon Alley. They built a couple coasters. They did the Minion thing. That's how you stretch it out. You don't need $1 billion every year. That's unrealistic.
And the thing I want to point out too is that, and I brought this up before, is again Disney giving the or like well, the cost amount, right? How we always talk about the dollars, how like people want to know how much stuff that Disney's going to be paying or like putting out to pay for things, right? So now
Right.
when you have like this 1.9 billion, no, which to me is it's fine, but now a lot of people are going to like pick at this and be like, okay, well, how much can they actually afford to do, right? So it's
Yeah.
like, well, I'd rather just see them build the stuff first, and then later, oh yeah, this costed us this much. Okay, cool. But then once you put that number out already, now all these fans and everybody else start having these expectations of what that amount of money can get Disney.
And that's a great point, Eva. I'm really glad you brought that up, because that is something that drives me nuts with Disney, is when they announce dollar amounts and they don't tell you what they're spending it on, right? So if you want to announce, like, for example, Galaxy's Edge, and say this is going to be $1 billion expansion for Disneyland, that's awesome. You have a concept and a dollar amount tied to it. That's fantastic. But when you don't give us the concept and you give us the dollar amount, I've been saying this for a long time, ever since they announced that 1.9 billion. If you don't know what they're spending it on, you don't know if it's enough or not. Because if you take $2 billion and you build a bunch of Fantasyland dark rides, that'll go a hell of a long way. Mm-hmm. But if you build a Fantasy Springs, it blows your entire thing in like the first year. so it all depends. It all depends. But this is a great little segue, little transition to the one and only Daddy Josh, who is looking absolutely sexy as hell, as always.
Stunning.
Stunning. Absolutely. And look, dude, with the knitted sweater, the dress shirt underneath, classic Josh right there. Just classic Josh.
But before you move on, OJ, hold on 1 second.
Oh God.
He's glistening.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
Exactly, bro.
Oh,
Exactly. Awesome. Fantastic. So he was at this media event. I think it was actually today, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe yesterday. I don't really remember exactly, to be honest with you. But it was either today or I think it was yesterday. And he was talking, and it was interesting. This clip is only like a minute long. I'm going to play the whole thing. Now, this was a Walt Disney World focused event, so it was a little bit more angled towards Florida, but he does mention the other parks also. Let's play this clip, and on the other side of it, we're going to talk about it. And our friend Mondo Five Fires commented on it. You can see down below, turbocharged. What's up, Mondo?
Five Fires.
Five Fires.
At Walt Disney World, we've made significant additions to each of our 4 theme parks, including new lands, we have new attractions, and then the transformation of Epcot. I just got back from Tokyo Disney Resort, where we opened Fantasy Springs. And this weekend, we opened Disney's Lookout Key at Lighthouse Point. And we're not done, far from it. We are turbocharging Disney experiences around the globe, and Walt Disney World's going to see even more fantastic stories come to life over the next decade. We've already given you some hints about our plans for Disney's Animal Kingdom and Magic Kingdom. And in August at D23, you'll hear more updates about Walt Disney World and all of our other destinations worldwide. So get ready, because our Disney Experiences Showcase is going to be unlike anything we've done before. Our future, it's boundless. Disney has been telling the world's greatest stories for more than 100 years. In our parks, cruise ships, and resort hotels, Imagineers continuously dream up new and innovative ways for our guests to connect with the stories that they love. You're going to experience that today with Tiana's Bayou adventure, and I know that you're going to love it.
Okay.
Really quick, I just have to say, in Daddy Josh fashion, that we've been hearing the term turbocharged for like the last 3 years. And this is what kind of concerns me in this. I don't think it's been that long, to be fair. I don't think it's been that long. I think there's the last few months, I believe. It was at one of these. Okay, because I remember I remember hearing that at the expo back in 2022.
Oh, really? Okay.
Oh yeah. Daddy Josh and I go way back. So I've been hearing this for the last several years of, we're turbocharging, we're full steam ahead and all that. I've had faster turbocharges that I did in the men's bathroom yesterday after having 2 cold brews. But
yeah. Wow. I don't know how fast that was, bro. You were in there a while, dude.
Yeah. but to be fair, as I said, I think now the terms that he is using, we're starting to see glimmers of hope. I'm hoping, because this is the term that you always use, OG, is like, we've been stood up at the altar how many times by, getting amped up and excited over nothing. But I think honestly, this is going to be the year for D'Amaro to shine. Not just by his hair products, but I feel like that for not even just us fans, but I think also for his career with the company is like going to be very telling of what's going to happen at D23. Now, primarily speaking, he had mentioned for Walt Disney World of like with Magic Kingdom, obviously with Beyond Big Thunder, Animal Kingdom with the Tropical Americas. But what I found was very interesting, and OG, you and I were having this conversation over the phone, was what IPs that actually they showcased
behind
him. And some of them are the typical, we were expecting Zootopia, Moana, even Maribel from Encanto because of the Tropical Americas and what have you. But there are some back there that I thought was very interesting. Now, could that be something? I don't know. But I think Disney just doesn't put something up there just for the sake of putting it up there.
No, it's not an accident, dude. So when you see Zootopia isn't too surprising for Walt Disney World because it was announced for the Tree of Life, that 4D show. But it does make me wonder, though, if there's more to that with Disneyland Resort as well. I'll come back to that in a second. But you're right. The IP selection is not an accident. It's very much intentional. And when you have on the far right Jungle Book, that's interesting because I think Jungle Book, and we talked about it, where you could have a Jungle Book, maybe little mini land in Animal Kingdom. I think that would be fantastic. What are they planning for Jungle Book? Is it something sizable like an attraction, or is it a show, or what is it? They're obviously not showcasing it for no reason. So it's up there for some reason. They are obviously planning something with Jungle Book. Yeah,
and to their credit, fan of the channel, Florentine had mentioned about Jungle Book, being they were to add it into like if they did like a jungle themed, as replacement if they weren't going the Tropical Americas route. Another person on Twitter suggested that if they were to revamp Cali River Rapids and turn it into a Jungle Book theme, which I thought that was quite interesting.
That is interesting. Now they don't have it. Do they have an India pavilion at Epcot? I don't believe they do.
No.
Okay, and we're seeing some stuff going on with Morocco and the tiles, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is it possible they give us an Indian pavilion? Because I'm hearing rumors that the next Disney animated princess movie is based in India. Isn't Jungle Book also based in India?
I believe so. Yeah.
So maybe they're planning on an Indian pavilion over at Epcot where Jungle Book and maybe this new princess will be. I don't know. I'm totally guessing. There's a lot of what ifs there, but that's just a possibility. Now, personally, I would prefer to go in Animal Kingdom. Obviously, I'm just throwing it out there because I think that might be an option with it if they do an Indian pavilion, and with that rumored Indian princess movie, that's possibly on the table. What do you think about go ahead.
Really quick, before you move to Conductor and Ebba, also the other two that I find quite interesting, OG, you pointed out to me earlier that Snow White is also showcased. And I noticed too behind Josh, I also see Wish, which I thought was very interesting as well.
Well, Wish is very interesting because Wish did not do well at the box office. I think it's performing okay on Disney Plus, but it wasn't a resounding hit by any means.
No.
So are they planning?
And actually, Ebba and I were having that conversation yesterday, and he actually can, touch upon that of, does the IP necessarily really have to be bringing in big numbers, or could it just be, if we do a good enough attraction, if we do a good enough land, people are going to flock to it no matter what.
Well, and yeah, so I was telling George to elaborate on that is that because you know how we talked about Star Wars, Marvel, how the kind of brand or IP like lately's kind of slipping and dipping, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, if we get an awesome attraction, it's not really gonna matter if like the kind of studio side isn't doing so hot with the fans, right? If it's not really loved, But if you make it awesome, if the execution of the attraction is glorious, people are gonna love it. So I think that the idea for Walt Disney Imagineering has to be a great story, a great immersive attraction, for it to work, and then it'll be popular. Because like if you okay, so Jungle Book, right? I mean, I do like Jungle Book, right? It's I also have the game, but I don't know if Jungle Book is a super hot IP. And same for Princess and the Frog. When Princess and the Frog came out, I love that movie, but it wasn't super hot. And now they're doing a whole Tiana's Bayou adventure for both coasts. So my question is like, does the like George said, does the IP have to be hot, being bringing in billions of dollars for them to decide, hey, this IP could actually work very very well in a theme park setting?
Yeah, yeah, I'm not really sure. I mean, I would assume they'd want to go with more popular franchises, but to be fair to Jungle Book, the live action one did almost $1 billion in 2016.
That's true, yeah.
So, I mean, it was big enough where it could pull those numbers. Now, granted, that was almost a decade ago at this point, but that's interesting. What are your thoughts, Conductor?
Well, so I believe on your guys' point, I'm going to take it the other way. I'm going to say strongly that if they're going to build an attraction, Disneyland is kind of tricky because you build something, it might be permanent for quite some time. Walt Disney World, they have room to, either reskin it, tear it down, do something else with it if it doesn't work out. Now, I kind of feel that if you're going to base a ride off of it, it has to be a good enough IP for it. And like Webbo was saying, it has to be executed almost perfectly, because the way I see it, since I'm going to go this way for a second, since Bob Iger retired, I think it was in 2016, and then Chapek came in, and again, I know how we all feel about Chapek.
2020.
Oh, 2020. Sorry. I know that Iger was still on the board behind the scenes pulling strings, even though he wasn't in front of the cameras, as I like to call it.
Yeah.
I think that the Disney company, especially with the Expo and then D23, they have their eyes trained on them. So when Daddy Josh is sitting there saying, "Oh yeah, we're going to have a wonderful D23. It's going to be like nothing you've ever seen before." Again, I take it with a grain of salt because I don't want to take it one way. I don't want to take it another way. But I think with a ride, yeah, it has to be a good enough IP. But if you're going to build a whole land to the IP, it has to be like beyond expectations, especially if you're going to bring it to possibly the Disneyland Resort, because the Disneyland Resort, we all know, is not even close to the size of Walt Disney World. That's why I said with Walt Disney World, if they bring at least a ride and maybe a show or something, and it just doesn't work out, they have the ability to correct that. Disneyland, they do not. So they have to be stuck with it.
That's a good point. That's a good point, Conductor, in terms of like, when you have a more finite amount of space, like you do at Anaheim.
Yeah.
What you put in that finite amount of space matters more.
Yeah.
Because you're limited. In Disney World, you have endless room. So you build that here, it doesn't work.
Still waiting for them to use it.
I know, right?
I know.
Exactly.
Well, so that was my kind of point from when we had our last conversation about Disneyland Forward and the possible IP, right? Because Bob Iger was like, "Oh, we're full steam ahead, theme park conductor on IP, right?" But so my thing is, okay, we have so much limited space here in Disneyland, right? Is that how much space, or like how many IPs, I guess could you say, could fit in the new spots of where they want to build theme park space, right? Because like with Fantasy Springs, what I love is that it's a land of multiple IPs, right?
Yeah.
But if we're gonna be building IP lands, how big is it going to be, how many attractions are there going to be, restaurants, right? So I'm kind of a little, not a lot, but a little worried about that aspect, just because I don't know how many kind of IPs we can get out of these lands.
And that's
Well,
why, and that's
and
what. Oh, okay.
oh,
Go
no,
ahead.
no, good. Never-
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I'm actually concerned with that too, because it seems like when Disney started going down that route, they were giving us like 2 attractions per land. Now it's starting to kind of showcase that we're getting 1 ride per
Right.
land. I mean, to be fair, Fantasy Springs, there are 3 mini lands. Peter Pan has 2, and then 1 ride for Tangled and 1 for Frozen, which basically gives 4 attractions. But if you're just going to break each mini land, it's basically 1 attraction per section. And then Zootopia over in Shanghai only got the 1 Zootopia ride. So yeah, I am wondering like the direction of the scope of these lands. Is it just going to be 1 attraction with a full immersive land? Are they still going to do multiple attractions depending on, maybe it depends on like the IP that they would actually be using, like Conductor had mentioned. And then OG, you could say what you were going to say, but Conductor, I also wanted to ask you too. The IP that they chose to put as the backdrop of for D'Amaro when he was speaking, do you feel like that they just kind of just threw all those IP up there, or do you think there was an actual purpose but behind them? Because what was funny was I noticed that because Coco has been talked about going through either maybe Walt Disney World or Disneyland, but Coco wasn't showcased on the backdrop, and actually no Pixar was actually showcased. It's all Disney animation, but that kind of made OG feel a little bit relieved that there was no Toy Story.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, and we don't know. This is actually this event was more skewed for Walt Disney World.
Right.
So we don't really know. He did mention the domestic parks in there, but we're still, it could be different equations still,
Yes, and that's what makes me wonder if like Walt Disney World is going to be heavily geared toward just a lot of the Disney animation, not so much Pixar.
So to answer your question, George, I think both ways. I think there is a purpose, but it's not the purpose that a lot of people are thinking about. The purpose may be for, if it's going to, again, we don't know for sure, but if it's going to be based off in Walt Disney World, what if Walt Disney World decides to, kind of, how can I put it? Not send like a mailer, but kind of like send a tease on Twitter, because a lot of people that go to the theme parks seem to be on Twitter, seem to be on Instagram. What if they're beta testing, like I mentioned the last live stream OG had with talking about possibly bringing a Lion King attraction, with all the years that Walt Disney World was, having shows about Lion King out here in Anaheim, having Lion King. What if, again, they are testing and trying to see if, one of those IP base that's behind D'Amaro could work in Walt Disney World? Because like I said, Walt Disney World has the room to, if they're going to choose one of those IPs to build it, to do all this research. Disneyland is landlocked. It has to be, how can I put it? It has to be a guaranteed 100% fact that they're going to bring that, and how they're going to bring it is a whole another logistical nightmare. The other side of it is, it might not be practical. It might not be intentional, because maybe the IPs they chosen, like I think you were mentioning, George, like with Coco, maybe those type of IPs that people want either at Disneyland, whatever, they've already been put into the design. They're already at a stage where they're pretty much at a point where, okay, we're going to bring it now. How do we fit it in the space? Maybe that's why those IPs aren't up there, like Arendelle, like Peter Pan, some of the mini lands and attractions that Fantasy Springs has that might come to Disneyland. Maybe those have already been decided, but those behind D'Amaro are maybe another test run, because who knows? Like Mr. Webber was saying, a Jungle Book themed ride or even a mini land like a good example like Bugs Land before Avengers Campus came. It was a small land. I think it had 2 attractions, and you had characters walking around. The whole thing felt immersive for little kids. You know, that's what I think. You know, so it could go either way.
It could. It's interesting for Disneyland Resort. If I were to put money on this, I'm thinking we're going to get 2 IPs for DCA, and it's going to be Avatar and Zootopia. Now, ideally, in a perfect world, I wish they would do our Latin Fantasy Springs idea with Coco, Encanto, and the 3 Caballeros, and put that in the symbol lot, because I think Latin culture with DCA is just a perfect match, and those are very popular IP. I don't know why they're not going that route. We'll see. I'm going to have an open mind with Avatar. We don't really know the storyline for the next few movies. There could be some California connection there that we're not aware of going forward. Who knows, you know? But I do think realistically, though, it's going to be Avatar and Zootopia. I feel like Zootopia is looking to go into that Hollywood area. I just have that gut feeling. We'll see, though. We will absolutely see, you know? It's interesting, though.
And really quick, because those IPs were more so, if that is the case, because they were talking about Walt Disney World, what they also could even do too with the Jungle Book would be to expand out Adventureland, because I know that they have that extra expansion pad that's in between Pirates and the Jungle Cruise. Now I know that they were talking about Moana, but depending on how big that attraction would be, they might be able to get Moana and the Jungle Book in there.
It's possible. And I'm curious, too, that Snow White was back behind Daddy Josh. So you guys just got recently, I mean, fairly recently, like 2013, I think, the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, a little over a decade ago. Do we need another Snow White ride in Magic Kingdom? I don't think we are going to get that. But it's interesting, though, that they threw her up there. Is she going to go into maybe Hollywood studios?
Unless... Well, sorry, just one second. Unless Snow White is a representation of the evil queen for Villain's Land.
There you go. Maybe.
Okay, well, maybe, but actually, I was going to go a different route. I was going to say, I wonder if Snow White is a representation that they change our god awful fantasy land and get it out of that medieval, that medieval like fair with the horrible pavement and everything. I mean, it's I'm sorry, compared to Disneyland's Fantasyland, Magic Kingdom's Fantasyland, aside from the new Fantasyland area, that needs like a major facelift.
Absolutely. So interesting stuff. But I will say this before we move on to our next topic. I will say this. This is go time for Josh. Josh, look, we are critical of you. If you, by any chance, or any of your people watch this, by any chance, you know, we want you to succeed because we're Disney fans. We want the best product possible. Yeah. You cannot get up there and give us a bunch of blue sky what if stuff with no big concrete announcements. We need big announcements for both Disney World and Disneyland Resort. Big announcements. Well, you can sprinkle in some other stuff, some small stuff. That's fine. But we need at least some stuff to hang our hat on that's big and concrete. Yeah. And look, here's the thing. If Josh doesn't do that, he's gonna really completely destroy the trust with the fans. I think the fans will be done with Josh after that. It's one too many expos of being disappointed. I don't think he can recover from that. Number one. Number two, he's on the short list for CEO. I've said this many times. If he wants that job, he's got to deliver. He's got to hit a home run at that expo where people are walking away from that thing going, "Oh my God, Josh fucking delivered." He needs to deliver big time. So everyone's talking about what an amazing job he did. I think he's a smart dude. Absolutely. I think he understands the weight of what's coming here, and I think he's going to deliver. But again, we've been stood up at the altar so many times that I'm still very, very hesitant to
Yeah. Well, the put a bow in it before we move on to our next section, the thing that I find very interesting is, okay, so like you said, Daddy Josh is on the short list for CEO.
Right.
Okay. You know, our last D23, I'm going to just put it in plain English, sucked. And, you know, Universal has already responded. They are opening Epic Universe next year. Okay, so and they just got done in their city walk putting up the Epic Universe Preview Center, which I've seen pictures. It looks amazing. So, like you said, OG, if Josh tomorrow comes into I guess they're going to have it in the Honda Center. If he comes into the Honda Center, has this big crowd, they're all excited, everyone's cheering, and he starts with that blue sky nonsense, I'm telling you now, like you said, the fan base is going to just lose all interest in him. The board after that will have no choice to not have him as the next CEO. So his name will just be scratched off the list. On top of that, then the fans that have been, like dedicated will lose faith, and you can't do that. So my whole thing is that what should have happened, and we don't know this because it's behind closed doors. No one talks about it. What should have happened for the last year and a half since they knew Epic Universe was building, was going to open in 2025. It's right down the road from Walt Disney World, especially. I think Josh and I think Iger should have been talking heavy and said, you know what? If we're going to put $60 billion into the domestic parks, cruise lines, all that, we need to go hard. We cannot afford to do blue sky nonsense because, like I said, if Josh tomorrow starts doing that, okay, the problem is, again, it's going to hurt his chances as CEO, and the next person that takes over for Iger, whoever that might be, that they're going to have a mountain to climb of crap that they have to go through, and just to even gain a little bit of the respect that they lost. You know what I mean?
And I don't trust Josh with the studio side of things, because not that I don't think he's like stupid or anything like that. I'm not saying that, but I don't trust him for the studio stuff because the studio is a changing landscape right now. Like they're in a very transitional period right now in Hollywood. It's not just the Mouse House, okay? It's all the studios, and I don't trust Josh to navigate those waters properly right now. The theater industry is like kind of dying a little. They're having trouble. The streaming stuff and all that. I don't trust Josh to navigate those waters. I barely trust him to do a good D23 Expo, to be quite honest with you. You know what I'm saying? So he worries me as CEO. I got to be honest. Go ahead, George. Then we'll move on to Tiana's.
And going back to your guys' statement about actually mentioning a price tag and not knowing what it's going for, like when you mentioned like 1.9 billion or the 60 billion, yes, it definitely is frustrating of hearing just the numbers and not knowing what it's going for. But what's even more frustrating on top of that is now that we got those numbers and it's out there in the Disney fan community, and as Conductor said, that if they do get on the stage and we get the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, maybes, ifs, ands, or buts, and nothing greenlit, then that really showcases the notion of saying, then why are you throwing these numbers out there? You're saying turbocharge, full steam ahead, 1.9 billion, 60 billion, 30% is going for maintenance and upgrades, 20% is going towards cruise line, 50% is going to expansion of the parks themselves. No. But yet all you're mentioning to us is, oh, this is what we could do. They don't have time to play around now as far as with that. That is now gone. That's in the Shadowlands now. We gotta move on to the Pride lands.
Like I've said many times before, no more blue sky stuff, no more fairy tale stories.
How many more fairy tale stories about your life?
No more fairy tale stories, Josh. We have got to get some greenlit stuff, confirmed stuff, tangible stuff too that we believe is actually coming. We can't do the Avengers e-ticket thing either, where you announce it and then we don't hear about it for years. We gotta get serious,
Yeah, that drives me crazy. And here's the other thing too, is that currently, I'm not saying like forever, but currently their parks and the cruise line are like their biggest hitters right now.
Right.
So they need to be investing into these parks. Definitely.
Well said, Ebba. Now, Ebba, we're gonna pivot to Tiana, but I know you have a heart out, brother. If you want to let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media before we pivot to Tiana, please.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Ochi, thank you so much for having me on. So you guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram, Mr. Webba at Webslinger760.
Yes, absolutely. So Webba, we will have you on again very, very soon. So unfortunately, we're cutting it short with him today, but Webba, we will have you back on again very, very soon. Have fun, in all your activities tonight, and we'll see you we'll see you very, very soon, brother. Appreciate you.
Well, I just have to say we have to have him on. It's part of his contract.
Well, that's true. Exactly. We're contractually obligated, right, Webba?
That's right. That's actually, guys. I'm off to go. To go enjoy my special access.
Oh, there you go. Enjoy it. I'll have Bob Iger prep your Pellegrino. Go ahead.
There you go. Perfect. Let Dad cross in his sweater.
Exactly. Take care, Webba. We love you, brother.
Yeah, love you guys.
Peace.
All right, let's go ahead and let's rock and roll with Tiana's. Okay, this is from the one and only, the GOAT, Mr. Scott Gooston. Disney says Tiana's Bayou Adventure officially features 48 all-new audio animatronics, 18 songs in the queue, and 5 songs in the attraction, including the original song, Special Spice. The ride officially opened June 28 at Walt Disney World. This is interesting. Now, 48. Now, George, do you know how many animatronics we had for Splash? Wasn't it like, I could have sworn it was like 70 or something like that.
I think in my head I had 75.
Okay, so roughly 75. So this is 48, obviously less. Okay. But here's the thing, and Doug Trio right below commented here says 48 is generous when most of the characters and animals are just figures and not actual animatronics. But I guess 13 isn't as impressive of a number. This is the thing, respectfully. And I don't know Dig, and I'm not going after Dig by any means, but I respectfully disagree with them. I don't know. I've never been on Walt Disney World's Splash, but our Splash here in Disneyland had a lot of very limited motion figures that did this kind of thing, like very little motion. I've said many times, the Brer Rabbit animatronic in our Splash Mountain looked like a Teddy Ruxpin with a little, like a stuffed animal with like a little motor in it. It wasn't anything crazy elaborate. So I get what Dig is saying there, but it's not like let's not pretend like the Splash animatronics were super fluid and so incredible. They really weren't. But George, what are your thoughts on 48? I mean, is that okay, or do you feel like they could have pumped it up?
For me, I think it's a healthy amount, to be honest. I mean, the Navi River Journey in Animal Kingdom literally has one audio animatronic. It's the shaman. I mean, I know that's not really too big of a comparison of Navi River to Tiana's Bayou, but I think even if we were to have 5 audio animatronics, I think is great. I mean, because people bitch and complain about Disney utilizing too many screens. It's going to be too many screens. Okay, well, we have 48 animatronics, and you're still not happy. So it's like I don't know like what it's going to take to please people to say what is enough for you to say, okay, this is perfect, because honestly in my mind nothing's perfect, but you're going to find flaws in anything.
Well, of course, but here that's the thing. Yeah, we lost animatronics, but we also gained other tech. So we have projection mapping, we have screens, we have other things to fill in the gap, so to speak, of the loss of the animatronics, right? Now, Tiana's isn't perfect. We have criticisms of Tiana. We've seen, we haven't been on it. None of us here have been on it, but from the videos, there are critiques. Okay, we've been vocal about those, and that our opinion might change when we actually ride it. Okay, to be fair, but you got to look. When you have 48 animatronics, and then you're also incorporating a lot of other technology interwoven into that, I think it's a fair trade-off. I don't think that's, too egregious, in my opinion. You know what I'm saying? Especially since, in my opinion, a lot of the Splash animatronics, at least out here in Disneyland, weren't that spectacular in the first place. That's kind of where I stand with it. Conductor, what are your thoughts on this? 48, obviously a good chunk lower than the former. Does it matter to you? Not so much. How do you feel about it?
So I think 48 is generous. Obviously, it's not the roughly 75 that we used to have both in Walt Disney World and here. But I kind of feel like you're saying with the projection mapping and all the new tech and the animatronics are newer how can I put it, newer technology, newer motors, newer gears, just new everything. So I kind of feel from 75 to 48, and again, 75 is just a rough number, but I kind of feel with less animatronics, it might be beneficial. So that way, if there's ever issues with them, because, like George said, nothing's perfect, especially this ride. Stuff is going to break down. Stuff is going to just, fall apart. And I kind of feel with less animatronics, they can kind of keep that under control and not just let it go and say, oh, the hell with it. So I kind of feel it is a generous number. I know you're going to get into the criticisms and whatnot. There has been some criticisms with, like you said, with the videos posted on Twitter, on Instagram, of employees riding it. Some of the animatronics just not reacting or not moving, or there's a glitch here or glitch there. I kind of feel that's why Walt Disney World decided to close their Splash Mountain earlier, because they knew they were going to open theirs earlier than obviously Disneyland is going to do. And I kind of feel Walt Disney World is kind of like the test run of Tiana's to kind of work out all the kinks. Why our version in Disneyland here in Anaheim is still, being constructed, still being put together, so they can work out all the kinks. Because to be honest with you, I personally utterly think our version is, how can I put it? Our version is looked at differently than maybe Walt Disney World's, because the way I look at it, the way I've talked to people, listen to people, there's a lot more people here in California and in Anaheim, around the areas, that actually help build Splash Mountain here in Anaheim. So they're going to be very skeptical of stuff falling apart, what's going to work, what's not going to work, what's going to last, what's not going to last. So that's why I say that. But again, 48 is not a bad number.
No, it's not. No, it's not. And here's the thing. I think that I've said it before. I think that this attraction was designed for Anaheim first, which is why you see gaps here in the attraction where there's these long gaps of nothing. Now, here's the thing. Those gaps, though, don't necessarily have to be filled with animatronics. No. So if Disney World wanted to go in there and add projection mapping and other elements along those gaps, I'd be fine with that. So I think the animatronics number in and of itself, the 48, is fine. The gaps, though, should probably be addressed. You should probably do something in those gaps that some sort of eye candy to kind of keep your attention in those longer gaps. But I do think this attraction was designed in mind for Disneyland's version, which has a smaller show building, which is why it doesn't fill this space as well as it probably will Disneyland. Go ahead, conductor.
Well, I was just going to say to that point, though, what if, because again, Walt Disney World's version is opening early, ours is still being constructed. What if we in Anaheim are going to get those scenes, and kind of like a bonus, since we have to wait? Because think about it, we're probably going to get our Tianas in the fall, and in the fall it's not hot, it's rainy, it's gloomy. Yeah, it might be humid and whatnot, but it's not summer. Walt Disney World is getting summer. So they have basically the whole attraction, and later on down the road, if they want to go in there and fill in those gaps, like we talked with the $2 billion for the Disneyland Forward and all that, they can go back and edit it. It's not like they have to rip down walls and stuff like that for the attraction. They can add stuff to it as it goes on, but maybe our version in California will already have that as kind of like, sorry, you guys had to wait. You're getting your attraction in the fall.
No, it could be conductor. And I think in general, and I'm a Disneyland person, So I love when Disneyland gets love. I don't want this to come off the wrong way, but I do get a little annoyed with Disney in general, or Imagineering, or whoever makes these decisions, where Disneyland is the belle of the ball and it's taken with such care, which I'm glad it is. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but then they seemingly don't care at all about literally any other park. So DCA gets the shaft almost every single time. Walt Disney World gets the shaft constantly. I just wish they would spread this love out. I get it. Disneyland was the first and only park that Walt Disney himself enjoyed, but these other parks and resorts bear his name and are just as important. And it makes me mad when you have DCA, which sits just feet away from Disneyland, and the Imagineers seem more willy-nilly with it because, well, it's not Disneyland. No, it bears his name. His name, Disney, is on the sign. Disney California Adventure. They should have the same love and care for DCA that they do Disneyland. They should have the same love and care for Walt Disney World as they do Disneyland. And I don't think they do. We've seen it over and over and over again. George and I talk about this all the time, where they favor Disneyland. We get the better Galaxy's Edge, the better to this, the better to that. We're probably going to get a better Tiana's too. Why can't they spread this love out a little more? It is a little frustrating. Go ahead, George.
Not to mention, as I mentioned it earlier, Walt Disney World has all the space. It has the blessing of size, but yet they don't utilize it. You would think they would get more creative with this stuff, and I feel like that they do for Disneyland because their resources are so limited, especially with the lack of space. Yeah. So, and I truly believe, and I'm probably wrong on this, but this is just how I kind of see it. I feel like Walt Disney World was never really meant to get Tiana's Bayou Adventure. If they were going to retheme Splash Mountain, I think it probably would have been something completely different. And I feel like Tiana's was kind of already set in the pipeline for Disneyland. And then after some certain events that happened in 2020, they pushed Tiana's up to the front.
Right.
That was meaning for Disneyland, but it's like, okay, you know what? We have no time to work on anything else in particular for Walt Disney World. So we're just basically going to copycat it, mirror it, if you will. But the thing is, the show buildings between Splash Mountain and Magic Kingdom and Splash Mountain and Disneyland are two totally different show buildings. They're built differently. So if something was meant for Disneyland and you're going to put it in Walt Disney World, it's going to look a little bit off balance because of how the structures are built.
I'm telling you guys right now, the 48 animatronic number will probably be the same number we get here in Anaheim. They spec'd this thing for Disneyland's building. Yeah. And they tried to fit that amount of animatronics based on Disneyland specs in that Splash Mountain in Florida. And that's why you're seeing gaps. Now, they don't have to, like I said before, they don't necessarily have to fill those gaps with more animatronics. I don't think they have to, but they have to fill it with something, maybe projections or some sort of eye candy to kind of keep you along the way. But almost certainly what you were saying, George, is 100% right. This was designed for Disneyland and then shoehorned into Walt Disney World.
Well, see, but my problem is, okay, so the from what I've heard, and this goes beyond Disneyland and the Walt Disney Company. It goes to Universal and Disneyland. Okay, so I've talked about it. Many other YouTubers have talked about it. Why, like you said, Tiana's was probably almost 100% guaranteed only for Disneyland. Why is it they, like George was saying, they almost just said, oh yeah, well, you know what? It would just be cheaper to just copy and throw it in Walt Disney World. No, why couldn't we get a different attraction to take over Splash so people that love going to Walt Disney World that might live here in California or other states that's not Florida, they can experience a whole new attraction that another Disney park, especially in the United States, there's only two obviously, but where it's not mirrored. To George's point, I would like to see something come to Walt Disney World that wasn't something that was meant for Disneyland, because it makes you unique. And that's what I've always said about Universal Hollywood. If you're gonna build, let's say, just for example, if you're going to build like the Donkey Kong expansion, right? You could still build it, but make it unique to Hollywood, where no other copycat version of it has stuff that the Hollywood version has. The same thing with Disneyland. Why? Again, Tiana should have only went to Disneyland, and the version of Splash Mountain and Walt Disney World should have been something completely different. That way people can flock there and experience something completely different. They can't just say, oh, you know what, I'll just go on YouTube or Twitter and watch a video on it because I have the same ride out here in Anaheim. Why am I going to spend $500, $600, $700 on plane tickets and hotels and all this other stuff to go see the exact same version when I could just pay $120 and go into Disneyland and, you know.
And that's what I've been saying for many years, Conductor, and especially since like the circulation of, even like they were saying that Radiator Springs racers, or a type of Radiator Springs racers could possibly come to Magic Kingdom, part of Beyond Big Thunder. Yeah. One, I don't think that fits in well in Magic Kingdom, to be honest with you, just the car franchise in general. But it's not even the full Cars Land; it's just the Radiator Springs racers ride. But again, that's a ride that exists over a decade ago. And I feel that it's more geared toward Disney California Adventure or the Disneyland Resort. I personally made it my business to fly from the East Coast over to the West Coast to experience Cars Land because I felt that it was more fit for the Disneyland Resort. And it gave me some excitement to say, you know what, I'm flying over there to experience something that I can't experience in Walt Disney World. I don't want to constantly have the similarities where there's like so much between Disney. I want Disneyland to be Disneyland and Walt Disney World to be Walt Disney World.
Well, to your point, when you got, the Cars Land with the ride, yes, it's the same ride system as Test Track in Walt Disney World, but like you said, if Disney wants to build Cars Land in Walt Disney World and Magic Kingdom, first of all, it's not going to feel very immersed because it's going to be cut way back because obviously the land is just not there for that area. And then on top of that, how can I put it? The whole aesthetic of Route 66, it fits a lot better in the West Coast than it would ever fit in the East Coast. And that's just to be honest with you.
And it doesn't fit at Castle Park. There are certain Pixar properties that fit Castle Parks beautifully. I think Coco is an amazing property that would fit beautifully in Magic Kingdom. I think even Ratatouille. I know Ratatouille is already in Epcot, but I'm just giving an example. I think Ratatouille, Brave would fit beautifully in a Castle Park. You could put that in Fantasyland. There's a lot of Pixar that could work. Cars ain't it. Okay, no. Cars does not work in that park at all. It works maybe in Hollywood Studios. It definitely works in DCA. It does not work in Magic Kingdom.
No.
So,
And I just want to touch upon just something real quick while we were on the subject of Tiana's. Also, they mentioned today, no specific dates or over-the-top details on this, but a Tiana based series is still coming to Disney Plus, and how this could all maybe make sense in the long run as far as for Tiana's Bayou Adventure was mentioned that the series is actually going to pick up after the attraction. Right. So the attraction is after the film, but the series is after the attraction. So I think that would be quite interesting, and it may kind of bring a lot of people in to say, okay, you know what, at least this is tied to something where now it can be a little bit more relatable. So I think hopefully that can kind of ease up the burn a little bit that Disney kind of put out there to say, hey, this is still tied to the film, even though that the events happen afterwards, but this is also a story that is going to continue into the Disney Plus series.
And what people have to understand here is that the game has changed. In Walt Disney's day, it was one movie and it was one and done. So when he made Snow White, that was it. That was Snow White. That was one movie. Peter Pan, one movie. Nowadays, these are not one movie things anymore. These are ongoing franchises. right? So you have the Toy Story franchise, you have even the Frozen franchise, multiple movies, TV shows, all kinds of stuff, right? So when people say, well, I want a Tiana book report ride, it's like, yeah, but it's different than Walt's day, though. Like now you have like Tiana's story is continuing well beyond the first film. So it's I think it's more appropriate to sort of base these films around maybe new stories or in different ways than you would have in Walt's day. When Walt only had one movie for, Snow White and Cinderella, it made sense to do that book report. But when you have maybe 3, 4, 5 movies, a TV show, this, that, and the other for these franchises, it's a little harder to do the book report thing because you have so much content based on one property. You know what I'm saying? So I think that factors into it.
So to that point, real quick though, I think Disney, especially Disneyland, I don't know if they took pieces out of, and I'm going to go with Pirates just for a second, because it always seemed like when a new movie came out, they added an element to the ride itself, like where they had the fog for Davy Jones. That was pretty sick. Now, could we, as fans going further, any attraction they might build, starting with Tiana's, could we see if they're gonna, span it out from a couple movies, TV show, whatever? Could we see elements added to the attraction? Maybe not like a huge, addition, but something where it kind of reference current, either movies or current shows of that IP. Could we see that?
Absolutely. So what you're saying is, if I'm getting you right, Conductor, what you're saying is that as these franchises go on, as they evolve in their shows and there's new movies, could the existing ride, like say Tiana's, get maybe animatronics of new characters based on the show and things like that? I think that's a definite possibility. I mean, we've seen that already with other attractions like Midway Mania. They added new characters from the sequels after the fact.
Or even take Test Track. Test Track doesn't even have any IP tied to it, and yet we're already getting a third version of it. Yeah. So I could definitely see if there's potential and there's growth and there's a high demand of popularity, especially coming off of the bank of Tiana, as far as like the series. I think in time they could add new animatronics, or actually even in time, and I'm not saying right now because the attraction's brand new. But 15 years down the road, they may revamp the whole ride again and add a completely new storyline based off of the series.
Well, see, to OG's point, if Imagineering is willing to do that, then the book report of the actual ride itself, the skeleton of it, remains relevant. You know what I mean? Right. By adding stuff here and there to relate to what's going on with the IP. Because if you're like George was saying, if 10, maybe I'm just going to go this way, 5, 10 or 15 years down the road, they add something, at least it's relevant, instead of saying, okay, no, you get this book report, it's 2024 and we probably won't touch it until maybe 2050. That just doesn't work. You can't do that, because then people are going to get bored of the attraction. They're not going to ride it. And the only time they're going to want to ride it is during the summer when it's hotter and bejesus and they want to get wet.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, here's the thing. Before we move on to our next topic, I want to ask you guys this. This is a little bit of a controversial topic. A little bit, not too much, but Tiana's Bayou Adventure. Personally, man, I might have to stay off social media when it opens officially, because I can see the writing on the writing on the wall with this already, right? The people who don't like Tiana's and the retheme, no matter what they do, it's going to be spun as a failure. So if they do the virtual queue, which I think they're doing, then people that don't like Tiana's will say, well, see, they're doing virtual queue to hide the fact it's not popular so they can control the wait times or whatever, the line or whatever. If they don't do virtual queue, though, and they just do it all just regular, right? Then the argument will be, see, there's no demand. They don't need a virtual queue. No matter what side of this you fall on, they're going to paint it as a failure, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I'm kind of dreading this whole thing, because there's gonna be a lot of that BS, that games, I think, when it opens. But George, I'll start with you, then I'll go to conductor. Overall, when this thing opens, and we're getting months down the road after it opens,
Right.
how do we know if it's a success or a failure? What would be the measuring stick? Hey, this thing flopped. Hey, this thing was a hit. How do we know?
I really don't even think we would really know, because I mean, there's so much controversy and, dare I say it, hatred put towards this attraction, just because of the negative rebound that's coming off of closing one of Disney's beloved classic attractions. And I feel, in a way, it's going to be successful based off of each person's own opinion and experience once they ride the attraction itself. And me personally, that's what I would go by. If someone has, really honestly, if someone has something negative to say about it, you're entitled to your opinion. But the first question out of my mouth is, did you experience the attraction live in person, your ass sitting in the log, going down the bayou? And if they say no, then honestly, I'm sorry, you're still entitled to your opinion, but I don't know how much relevance it has, because I'm sorry, you can't go by another person's descripted article or video or photo. You can only know by experiencing it yourself. If you ride the attraction and you come back and say, you know what, it's not my cup of tea, I probably would never go on it again.
That's fine.
Perfect.
That's absolutely fine. Absolutely fine.
If you go on this and you come off and you're like, you know what, this is the greatest thing since sliced white bread, perfect. Good for you.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's only relevant until, as I said, we haven't wrote it yet. We're giving our opinions on it of what we feel like, but we still don't know yet until we actually write it.
And I think it's going to be just as busy as Splash Mountain. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I don't think the normies, us theme park nerds, notice the IP, notice the music a lot more, and all that the little minutia involved and all the details. The normie doesn't. The normie is like, yeah, I want to go on that because of the 50-foot drop. Yeah. And that's as far as it goes for a lot of people. They're not that deep in this. Like, they're not caring what the show scenes and the music and this. I mean, it's part of the experience, but it's not the end all be all for the normies. A lot of normies, a lot of college kids, this, that, and the other, high school kid, they're going on this thing for the drop, and that's it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I don't think we're going to see a big dip in the numbers one way or the other, or even an uptick on them, really. I think it's going to be pretty much what it was before in terms of popularity. And I could be wrong, but I don't think it's really going to, really go too extreme one way or the other. And I think overall it'll be a success in that regard, because we're not losing any popularity. I don't think it's going to be a ghost town over there because they switch it to Tiana's. I mean, I'm sorry. I know there's a lot of people that don't like the retheme, but if you think that this attraction is going to suddenly become a 5-minute wait, during the summer or something like that, it's not going to happen.
I was just going to say, I think the attraction itself is going to kind of lean more towards the demand of how Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway is. It's popular. Mm-hmm. People go on it. They enjoy it. They love the music. They love the characters. But I think that Tiana's would have like the one step up, as you said, OG, because it has that thrill factor.
Yeah, it has a thrill factor, and that didn't change. So if the normies were going on Splash Mountain because they like the drop is still there. It doesn't change anything. So it's not really, what do you think, conductor? How do we know if this thing is a hit or a flop, or do we not know?
So I'm going to take it 3 different ways. So if it's going to be a success, we'll see the wait times. Again, I'm going to quote you, OG, because they, if they're doing, this lightning lane and they're controlling all the wait times and all that, they can manipulate that. Now, like George was saying, though, if you can't, so everyone's entitled to their opinion. I'm not dissing that either, because I 100% believe that, because there's people that disagree with me about Universal Hollywood's future. But when you can't really go heavy criticism if you haven't ridden the attraction yourself. And like your point, OG, if the drop didn't change. So if the normies want to do it, hey, more power to you. They're gonna ignore the fact of the total reskin. But on the other hand, though, I don't know if the college, maybe the adult side of things, I don't think it's the retheme's really going to catch on as if maybe teenagers, kids with their parents. I think it's more geared towards that, because again, you're not losing an attraction. You're basically getting the same attraction back with the same ride system, but you're getting a reskin. Now,
Right.
on the other hand, the bad part is, like you said, all of us theme park nerds, we're totally old school. We love Splash Mountain. We were all devastated. I think Twitter and Instagram, they I think when they announced Walt Disney World's first, and this is before Disneyland, but Walt Disney World, I think Twitter actually went offline for a little bit because there was so many tweets and postings and hatred and all sorts of stuff. So in the normies' minds, doing Tiana's is never going to change their mind. They are always going to think Splash Mountain, and not a damn thing's going to change their mind. Now, on the fact that we don't know is probably the better way to look at it, because at least if you don't know, it can go either way. There's not one set way. It could go either way. It's in the middle. It could go left. It could go right. So there's 3 different ways to look at it. That's the way I see it.
Yeah. Well, interesting. It'll be very, very interesting to see when this thing opens. How do we know if it's a hit or not? I guess maybe guest surveys, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Internally, Disney will know in that regard, I guess.
Sure.
I will say, though, not saying like anything specifically to the ride itself. However, whatever the issues are going on right now, operational, I don't know if have been any updates as of right now, because I know that the ride has been closing down a lot due to like technical issues or what have you. But I will say Disney has to get a grip on that quickly, because June 22nd is going to be the preview for D23 members, and D23 members paid an upcharge to ride that ride.
Right.
Yeah.
And I say that to Disney because I don't want them to get the backlash off of that because of what is surrounding this ride. I want it to be a success as much as it possibly can for them. And if that ride is not up to running for the D23 members who may be flying in there specifically for that event, Disney is going to have to be doing some big time damage control.
Yeah. And to your point though, since D23 members, like you said, paid an upcharge to sit there and try to get a grip, like you're saying, George, could it be possible? And it's probably not possible, but I'm going to throw it out there. Could it be possible, since it's still in the beta stage, the way I look at it, it'll still be at the beta stage at that point, but with live, riders instead of these plastic, ride things. Could it be possible that they will ask the D23 members, hey, would you not mind, shooting video inside the attraction? Would you not mind taking pictures? So if there are errors, it's not gonna stop them from tweeting on Twitter or Instagram or texting whoever, hey, this part of the scene did this, did that. But at least it's not a picture, it's not a video, it's not something where YouTube or Twitter or Instagram or TikTok, whatever, will like go crazy over and say and just add to the whole hysteria of, I wouldn't say anger, but disappointment that Splash went away. You know what I mean?
I think if Disney has any shred of doubt that there's possibilities that the ride will still not be up I won't even say 100% because honestly, what attraction really is running at 100%? Even to like Indiana Jones, Radiator Springs Racers, Rise of Resistance, So rides go down. It's a thing. SFG always says it's just a thing.
It's a thing.
But I do think that if they feel like that there's going to be more of an operational issue still going on, they may try to reduce a lot of the tension, so to speak, by saying, you know what, this is, for the event, we ask you to not record, film, or something. I don't know. I think either way, Disney kind of would set themselves up because then people would then go and say, oh, that is saying, oh, I still paid for this ticket, but I can't do what everyone else did. But so I feel like either way, they're kind of stuck in that rut. But that's one thing I hope Disney can get it ready for G27.
Well, I was just going to say to that point real quick, and I didn't mean to cut you off. I was going to say, if people take it the wrong way, they might say, well, like you said, I'm paying an upcharge ticket to ride the event. Why will you not allow me to take pictures? Why will you not allow me to, take video? Because a lot of D23 members, if I'm not mistaken, they are influencers. They do have a big fan base, and if Disney is coming out and saying don't do that, then it almost sounds like a bad cover up.
And that's where the iffy ground is with D23, with annual pass holder previews, with media previews.
Sure,
they're getting invited, or with annual passes. Hey, you know what? If you're in the area, you're making a reservation. You're picking a date. Fine. With D23. You're paying something extra, and I feel like that's where the iffy ground thing is, because it's in the short amount of time right before this ride opens to the public, and this ride honestly still isn't ready operation wise. That's what makes me nervous.
Well, and then you have a PR mess. If you go in there and you've been allowing video right now, when these media previews and what have you, cast member previews, right? You've been allowing video. Then the D23 members get to go in there and experience this thing, and now you're reeling that in. Now you're telling them no, you can't film. That would be a PR mess. I think it would be better for them to allow filming and let the ride break down. That sucks.
No,
I think PR wise, I'm just talking on a purely PR standpoint right now. PR wise, let them film, and if it breaks down, it breaks down. If you prevent people from filming, you get all the conspiracy theory people out there. See, Disney is preventing people from filming. It must be worse than we thought it was. Yada yada yada. Then you start to put fuel on the fire that this is worse, and it leads to worse PR. I think you let them film. If it breaks down, it breaks down.
Would you both suggest that Disney shouldn't have even done anything with the ride with D23? Have the media event, have the annual pass, and then move just to regular opening. For a matter of one day, I think, honestly, that could be more detrimental by adding in a preview for D23 members, to be honest with you.
Well, because it's an upcharge. Whenever you put skin in the game, they pay for that, right? They pay for that preview?
$60.
Yeah. See, now you're getting skin in the game now. So now those people... It's like the Genie Plus thing. When you had free Fast Pass and the ride broke down, you didn't give a shit because it was free. But then when you start paying for Genie Plus and Lightning Lane and all this, now when the ride breaks down, you're ticked off because you paid for it. So those D23 members are going to be really, really mad if it keeps breaking down and it goes down for 3 hours and to get back up. They got to get it. Either they got to get this thing running consistently before then, or I don't know. It could be a PR mess for them. It really could.
Sure. Well, so let me ask you both this: with the media, already riding it, the Imagineers that were part of building, putting the attraction together, that you obviously see, Twitter, small little videos on. Do you think it was such a good idea to allow the Imagineers, allow whatever press they've already allowed in, to put that online? Or do you think that should have came after the grand opening? Because now, if you look on Twitter, some of the posts from some people, it shows the ride working great. It shows issues. Like for example, I forgot his name, but the big crocodile animatronic. They showed a little clip where they were riding past, and all the animatronic was doing was moving its eyes. The whole body just shut down. Then, that whole show scene with the house and all that, with all the animatronics moving. Well, there was sound, but no animatronics moving. So I don't think that was such a good idea to post that on social media, especially since D23 members, since obviously the Disney company is going to allow them to pay an upcharge to sit there and ride the ride. Now the people that are waiting for the grand opening, so the general public, now they're going to have two iterations. They're going to have the Imagineers and some press. Then they're going to have D23. And actually, I'm going to add another one. Then they're going to have media. So you're going to have three different variations. And I'm sure the Disney company is going to ask, especially the media, as they're shooting, inside the ride, if there's any little bad spot to, scrub it out and make it look wonderful, even if you have to cut that scene out of the video for the media. So yeah, you're going to have three variations of that. And then by the time the general public gets to ride the ride with no restrictions besides Genie Plus, they're going to say, well, they're going to say, well, what the hell? Basically, the ride's basically brand new in a way. Yeah, it was reskinned, but you spent all this money with brand new animatronics, all this stuff, and it's already fallen apart, and it hasn't even lasted a week yet. Well, so I was just going to say this, though. I was going to say, with all that going on, like you mentioned, OG, the problem is the tension is so high on both attractions, the Walt Disney World version, the Disneyland version. You can't have this stuff going on. You can't, because tensions are...
Yeah, exactly. Well, you have people that did not want this retheme from day one, right?
Yeah.
And so they're gonna nitpick this more than anything else they've ever seen. Sure. Okay. I mean, you're gonna see the nitpick level 10,000. I mean, I'm serious, And so when you're right, so when you go in there as Disney and you release a crappy POV as a first look, okay, let's be honest, it was crappy. Yeah. And then the ride is breaking down a lot more than the normal. It is a lot more. At the beginning, I was like, okay, this is pretty standard, but it's getting to excessive with the breakdowns.
Sure.
And then all this other stuff going on. So it's a PR mess because it's like you said, Conductor, it's insult to injury because you already have people that are looking for problems because they don't like this idea of it being rethemed. So you have to, as Disney, you have to make sure you're on your A game with this thing because they will go in there with every little thing. So yeah, it's crazy. Disney hasn't handled it the best. I got to be honest. They really haven't.
It almost seems like, and I'm not like pinning it on anybody, but it's just like, yeah, there are people out there that set this thing up for failure, but in the sense, Disney kind of sets the stage, so to speak, to allow this stuff to happen.
Well, yeah, no, they do. It's absolutely frustrating, So, but now that you've allowed filming, before I move on to Little Mermaid, now that you've allowed filming already, if they pull back on that, I think that's even a worse PR mess. You have to let people film. If you start to restrict. Yes, it looks like a cover up. Then it looks like, it's getting worse. It's really breaking. They're not allowing filming now. You put fuel on that fire. You exacerbate the problem. You got to allow the filming for D23 and all that. And I think they will. Hopefully the attraction will be more consistently operational by that time. We'll see. But we have Little Mermaid. We finally got news on this, George. We've been talking about this. Little Mermaid, a musical adventure. And this is courtesy, by the way, of our friends at Mouse Info. They are awesome over there. Little Mermaid, a musical adventure, will blend puppetry, mocap, and digital effects fall of 2024. So just in a few months, some concept art, really adorable stuff. I love The Little Mermaid, and I love Howard Ashman. I'm a huge Howard Ashman fan. Always have been. Disney Live Entertainment is heading under the sea. for a newly reimagined entertainment offering, The Little Mermaid: A Musical Adventure, as an all-new theatrical production coming to Disney's Hollywood Studios this fall. It says here, and I love that Max. Look at how cute that little Max is. The new version of the show promises all new physical sets, a cast of puppets, live performers, and stunning visuals, including some high-tech new upgrades to pull off an artful blend of practical and projected scenic design, a real and digital puppetry. The team is pairing some tried and true methods. The blacklit puppets are back with state-of-the-art technology. George, thoughts on this?
Okay, so a couple things. First, I have to say, I am very excited that we are getting some form of entertainment back because, I mean, recently we've been seeing a lot of budget cuts. I know there are some things going on with Disney performers and actors with the union out at Disneyland. I mean, I know that's two separate things, but entertainment right now is honestly, I hate to say this, a dying art form in the theme park industry. So it's definitely a breath of fresh air to actually see a new revamped show coming back to light, if you will. Because I have to say, I was not a fan of the original Little Mermaid show. It was too dark. The storyline was not cohesive. I felt like it was very choppy, very rushed. Based on the description of what you just read, it sounds like that they're fixing those issues and redoing it with the newer kind of technology. I'm excited to see it. And I find it very interesting that when they had mentioned in one of the articles of when Josh D'Amaro got up and spoke about, you know, new offerings and expansion to Walt Disney World, that it's not necessarily just Magic Kingdom and Animal Kingdom that they could be looking at. And sure enough, they announced this for Hollywood Studios. So that kind of makes me wonder, putting two and two together, could they also be aiming for something? Because I know there's been a lot of rumbles, you know, in the Diz Twitter that they could possibly be doing an expansion beyond the animation courtyard, which this is where the show is going to be placed, in where the Star Wars launch bay and the Disney Junior live show is. So obviously, since the show is getting greenlit for a specific time frame, which is going to be this fall, obviously, you know, the animation courtyard area is probably going to stay, but I wonder to what degree of like what they can transform that area and what they can put beyond that expansion pad behind where launch bay is. So I'm very curious to see if there's any tie-ins to an expansion of the studios based off of just this piece of information. But for the show itself, the concept art looks beautiful. I love that. I'm digging that Max puppetry. And I'm with you, OG. I mean, anything that Howard Ashman touched as part in the Walt Disney Company is just sheer brilliance. It's gold. And I think to showcase his work in a show, it needs to be spectacular like him. Yeah. And I think, honestly, I hope that they pull that off, but just based off of the description and the concept pieces, I think it looks great.
Yeah, well said. And Mr. Conductor, what are your thoughts?
So my thought is, first of all, I'm going to quote George. The theme park industry has been lacking on shows. You know, they claim it's due to when COVID happened in 2020. I'm going to take that with a grain of salt. But I'm glad this show's coming. My whole thing is I love Little Mermaid. I grew up with Little Mermaid. So a lot of people grew up with Little Mermaid. I think I saw the original myself, not in person, but I saw it. I did some research probably about a year or two ago. And I do agree. It was dark. It was kind of slopped together, last minute, you know, throw a whole bunch of ideas into a show and see what happens. At least I think that this is going to be planned out. It's going to receive grave reviews. And I think it's something, if it's successful enough, I think we could see it whether it's temporary or for a long period of time at Disneyland, because Disneyland, they're kind of back and forth with their shows. So this would be a nice addition. But again, it's in Walt Disney World, which I'm not complaining about, because it seems like a lot lately, referencing back to Tiana's for a second, it seems like Walt Disney World is like the test park for a lot of new stuff that the Disney company wants to put out.
Absolutely. Yeah. I agree with you. And I think you're right. I feel like that they are kind of not taking their time on it, but I feel like that they are making sure to, as you had mentioned, to kind of do it right, rather than just kind of shoehorn it back into the theater and not give it any justice as to, why they're putting it back in there in the first place. Because honestly, up until they even made the announcement, I thought the Little Mermaid show was on the chopping block, for the longest time, even before the events of 2020. And even after the fact that the show didn't come back online when the parks reopened, I thought, okay, this thing is dead on death's doorstep. It's not going anywhere. But the fact that they announced it, and we haven't heard anything from it since, and it's like, okay, maybe they dropped it, maybe it's on hold, or maybe it's canceled. But after today, that they kind of confirmed that they're working on it. Here's the concept art, here's some photos, and I'm very excited to see what they're going to do with it.
Well, see, to your point, George, I'm kind of glad though how can I put it? It kind of sucks for people that like the show in general, like the IP, that it took so long to bring back. But I'm kind of glad, like you said, like they planned it out. They didn't just slop it together, which means it could be an amazing show, which I'm not opposed to. I don't like, I like, for example, Rogers the Musical at DCA. I thought it was okay. I didn't think it was like fantastic. Like, oh my God, every time I go to DCA, I have to go see it. I kind of feel like this Little Mermaid show. Yeah, if I'm going to DCA, if it's going to be placed there or at Disneyland, hey, I'll take some time out. I'll go see it every time I go to the park, because it's that good. So yeah. I don't mind them taking that long. It sucks it took this long, but at least they took their time with it, and they put the right person in charge to produce the show. They didn't just handpick some out of a hat and say, "Oh, hope for the best." You know what I mean?
Like half-ass it.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And honestly, OG's the same. It's like, I don't care what the actual opening date is. I don't care. I mean, obviously within reason that is, but it's like, I'd rather you take your time and pull out a phenomenal project than give us something right away and it's cheap as hell.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, well said. Well said. Well, our last and final topic, ye to the ha. We have some country bears right here. Country bears. This is from the one and only Mr. Scott Gooston, as always. Mr. Gooston says here, a new look at the Country Bear musical jamboree coming to the Magic Kingdom. So this is opening, it says here, on July 17th, which is really funny. Disneyland's birthday for a Walt Disney World attraction. Really, really funny. But what do you think, George? Opening date, we it's all set.
I'm glad we did get the actual date for it to come out. I think honestly they moved pretty quick with this, so they must have had already like visioned like what it was going to be, how they wanted the audio animatronic bears to look. They got the recordings done. I thought they moved pretty quickly. Plus, I think it kind of went under the radar because I think a lot of people were so focused on Tiana's Bayou Adventure that it kind of gave Disney like, hey, let's get this in, while people aren't like focused on it too much. I actually, I'm digging Wendell's new look as a character. I'm for sure they'll have him as a walk-around character. And of course, you gotta love Big Al. I'm so glad Big Al stuck around, and I'm very excited to see it. I'm excited to see what the updated audio animatronic bears look like, sound like. I'm curious to know what songs, because I know that they touched upon it like in the sneak peek. They showcased like the Bare Necessities and a couple other Disney tunes, but I'm curious to see the show as a whole. And I don't know, because I always say this to myself, and I say I'm not going to, but then I do it anyway. I might not watch the show. I might just wait till I see it, for myself. Not because of spoilers or anything, but it's just like it's one of those things I might want to see in person, like from me to end. But yeah, I'm very excited. I do think it's quite comical that they chose Disneyland's birthday to open Walt Disney World. However, I'm still wondering if it's because there's eventually still going to be some tie-in that Disneyland may get the Bears back in some odd shape or form.
we were at California Adventure, just you and I, George, right, yesterday, and that Big Al. We were checking out that Big Al statue and stuff, and actually, we were there the whole weekend. But my case to be made for DCA and the Bears is this: they spent the money on that beautiful statue, which is it's a big boy. It's a big boy statue. That thing is not small, but they spent the money for that, right? Not to say that's a huge investment. It's not. But that statue, combined with the fact that Disney likes to build things in twos, because when you build things in twos, you get more bang for your buck. It's a little cheaper, right? That's why they do two. That's why they built two Galaxy's Edges. That's why they do that kind of stuff. That's why they love to clone things. So that's why I think the timing of that Big Al statue at DCA with Florida getting a new bear show, it wouldn't surprise me if they're going to have a few Country Bears and a few Country Bear animatronics built for maybe Grizzly River Run or something. Who knows? And the Bears have had a presence even as walk around characters at DCA for a while. Yes. They've beta tested it. I think they're popular, so it wouldn't shock me. I'm not going to bet $1,000 on it or nothing, but I would bet maybe a steak dinner on it, So I'm pretty bullish on it. What do you think, Conductor? What do you feel, brother?
So I kind of feel the statue in DCA at Grizzly River Run. I think that was a hint, because we've all been talking about it with all the work they're doing to the Redwood Creek area, that whole area. Now, I know the hotel's right there. What if that statue is a reference to either adding Big Al animatronics into Grizzly River Run, or it's to build an like a small, not humongous, but a small area in that Redwood Creek area, for like a little small amphitheater.
Do a
show.
It's funny, Conductor. You actually just mentioned both of our ideas, because when we were there, OG's idea was to put the Bears in Grizzly River Run. My idea was to put in a small theater in the Redwood Creek Trail and revamp the Country Bear Jamboree.
Yeah, it's possible. It's very possible. I think that just the timing of everything, I think there's something to be exactly. There's something to be said about it, and they figured a way to make the Bears more what's the word for it? Sellable, by incorporating the Disney IP flywheel into their music. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Let them sing Disney songs.
And it can add more like an uptick in the Bear merch, with now like their new outfits and their new kind of visual look and everything. They could add so much more. Can you imagine? You know what, OG, you said you'd do a steak dinner. I'll add in dessert onto that. I bet you they're going to come out with a Big Al popcorn bucket.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, for that, 100%. Yeah. I would almost bet $1,000 on that one. That one. I mean, that one's up for, I think, almost up for sure.
Yeah, buddy.
That would break the internet if that happened. That would break the internet. Absolutely. Gentlemen, fantastic conversation. Conductor, it's always good to have you on, brother. We appreciate you, man. Yeah, it's great to be on the OG show. You know what I mean? Like you said at the beginning of the show, I'm starting something new on my channel. I'm calling it Conductor Thursdays, where I do a live stream at 7 o'clock at night, California time, obviously. And it's basically, I'll have some topics. You know, everyone's free to join and, you know, post in the comments. And it's kind of like just a free open forum. You know, it's a live discussion on whatever it might be: Disneyland, Walt Disney World, Epic Universe, Universal, Hollywood, what could be coming, what's going to be taken out, what customization is going to happen. It's just open. I don't, my whole thing is I like to, you know, like you do, OG, I like to have topics to talk about, but I also like to add time after that just to do an open forum. And if someone has a question during the time that I am talking about a topic, I have no problem of stopping and then answering that, because maybe they're curious. Maybe, again, they live in another state where there is no theme park. They're trying to plan things out. They might want to ask someone that's been to the theme parks, that's kind of like a resident and that goes there so often. That way they're informed. So it's Conductor Thursdays at 7 p.m. at night. Check it out.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. I was tuned in last Thursday. We had a great conversation on there. It was awesome. So check him out. Subscribe to him. Conductor Thursdays. If you're a theme park nerd, which if you're watching this, I'm pretty sure you are, make sure that you check Mr. Conductor out. And the Italiano, if you could let everybody at home know where they could find you on social media, sir.
Absolutely. You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Disney George. You could also find me on Instagram under the Disney Italiano. And of course, you can find me right here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner, with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
There we go. Comment down below with all your thoughts on everything we discussed today, the future of Disneyland Resort and Walt Disney World. What is Josh going to announce at that D23 fan event? We talked a lot about Tiana's animatronics. What are your thoughts on that? The news today, the Little Mermaid show coming to Hollywood Studios. The Country Bears getting an opening date, July 17th. We would love to hear from you guys and gals down below. Thank you all so much for watching. That's the Italiano. That's Conductor. And I'm OG.
Young blow, but I'm built like an OG.
Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.
세상이 누구에게나 공평하게 추악해.